is going on, everyone? It is Steiner with another episode of Secondhand Talent. With me today is Caroline Herbster. Caroline, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm stoked to be here with you.
I'm so happy they're here. And for folks, if you're listening and not watching on YouTube, I've got something to say about Caroline right here. Caroline Herbster is the artist and owner behind Rising Tide Art Studio. She's best known for creating live art at concerts and festivals, including the likes of Goose, Dead and Company, Phish, Billy Strings, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, and Hulaween Music Festival in Live Oak, Florida at Suwanee National Park. Caroline's live watercolor illustrations and drawings capture the energy and essence of the music and crowd it shows, resulting in a personal and collective, tangible memory of nearly every show she sees. Please welcome Caroline Herbster, the rising tide herself, to the show. We're so happy to have you here. Thank you so much for being on.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy to be here. This is going to be fun.
So this is going to be fun because I've got a curveball for you. So, folks, I'm going to let you in on a secret. Caroline was supposed to be a part of Secondhand Talent last season, and some amazing things have happened in the meantime, which we'll get to later in the interview. But Caroline already knows our first question, which is what does Secondhand Talent mean to you the first time you heard it? Maybe we'll release her original answer as a bonus clip sometime down the line. But instead of that, since you already know,
Sure.
what I'd like to ask you is, with secondhand talent being the people, as we say, the people who shine the spotlights, right?
Mhm.
Everybody around the live music scene that make the experience happen. You're a live painter, live drawer, among many other things. Where do you see yourself in the space of secondhand talent?
Oh gosh. That's an interesting question. Because I think that um I've experienced so much transformation doing what I do that I have been a part of the crowd, am a part of the crowd in more present contexts. Like I am getting hired to do what I do, or, sometimes put on the guest list for a band that I want to see. Um, and in terms of the future, I think that I certainly have dreams and hopes for what my career is becoming. So I see that I think I've had a very professional approach to what I do, but it
Sure.
didn't start out as something that I planned to do professionally. I had Rising Tide as an art business, as a space for me to create art, and my artistry moved through me by making art at concerts. So I I guess to really kind of encompass all of that, past, present, future, is that at shows, I feel that I'm a vessel for the energy of creation. And I think that for a lot of musicians and artists that I go to see, that's what they're doing too, is surrendering and allowing that creative flow to move through them. And I have found my flow through live art. Um, so I think that I'm helping to, I mean, I'm just experiencing the music the way that my soul and spirit wants to experience it. And there's this beautiful um, result in that I get to share that with other people who it really resonates with.
And that's exactly what I'm finding my end. So what you just ended with right there is that, kind of what I mentioned in your beautifully written introduction. The fact that you create, your style, which we'll get to, you draw, or we'll hint at it, you draw from the crowd.
Yeah.
And it's a unique perspective, and it's unique in the sense that everybody in the crowd has their own unique perspective. So it's a
Yeah.
unique perspective of a unique perspective, and you're creating, like you said, like I read, a tangible memory for somebody to take with them and carry on that live music that they enjoyed so much. You know, you being the conduit for that music to create those physical pieces that people can look back at and, you know, remember fondly, remember good times with good friends, good music, and a good
Yeah,
atmosphere. I think that's hugely important when it comes to not just keeping the love and the spirit of live music alive, but making it so that, you know, people can, you know, take something from it home with them to really, you know, remember it by without, you know, not just listening to the show, like a really unique memory that they can take with them.
totally. Thank you for your kind words. I appreciate it.
Well, you know, sorry to throw a compliment at you so early. It's just it was on my mind. Um, so you talk about being this conduit, and that does not come from nowhere. So
Hmm.
as I kind of go with all my guests, you know, I kind of would love to know where you got your start because the passion and love for music that you have just comes through with what you say. Where did that come from? Where did that begin?
Sure. Yeah. My love for music certainly comes from my family, from my upbringing. Um, I have a really unique life story that I was born to the music of the Grateful Dead. So, you know, just I was born to Uncle John's band. Um, and yeah, I love that. I think that that song has guided me in a lot of ways and maybe confused me sometimes too. Some of the lyrics, you know, how does this song go? That kind of feels like my life at times, but that's also the beauty of it is that my life is a song and I get to, you know, jam and figure it out and have highs and lows and you know, write lyrics or not. So um yeah, I grew up with parents who loved the Grateful Dead and other bands like, you know, Dave Matthews and my mom loves Chicago and REO Speedwagon and you know, I remember in eighth grade listening to The Wall while painting the living room with my dad and he kind of gave me the whole rundown of the story and wait till college to watch the movie and you know so always surrounded by that love of music and live music. When I was really young, my parents stumbled across Spirit of the Suwanee Music Park that you mentioned in the intro. I think I was about one, and they found Magnolia Fest, which was it may have even been the inaugural festival, but this beautiful kind of roots festival at Suwanee. Um, and yeah, we went every year until, you know, school got in the way. I think probably second grade was when we stopped going. And maybe kids
Anyway.
weren't free anymore at that time. But you know, bands like Donna and the Buffalo, Merle Saunders, Rat Dog, Little Feat. I remember getting a Little Feat poster there when I was about 4 or 5, and it was on my bedroom wall for a while. The classic one, you know, the tomato girl.
Waiting
Um,
for Columbus. Yep.
Yep. So, you know, and just loved that. Like grew up with that at a young age. So that was some really foundational live music experience for me. Um, and there was this incredible live artist at MagFest whose name is Scramble Campbell. And some listeners may be aware of who he is. He is now the artist in residence at Red Rocks. But back in the
Right.
90s, he was a Floridian and yeah, does these really cool big canvases in front of the stage. Like I remember being about 3 years old at the amphitheater at Suwanee, which is like, if you've never been there, it is an amphitheater in the trees. Depending on the festival, you may or may not be able to put hammocks up, which is when you can. So incredible to just sit in a hammock and watch music right there, you know?
Sounds amazing.
um, but it's really, really a cool, natural little, yeah, venue space there. And I can remember being 3 years old, barefoot, face paint, standing right there in the dirt, just watching Scramble Campbell scramble the art, scramble the artists on stage into art. Um, and he kind of became like a household name in my house. We talked about him at dinner probably once a week when I was a kid. And I asked my parents recently, like, why did Scramble Campbell come up so much? Thinking that they had probably planted those seeds or whatever. And they're like,
Mm.
you wanted to talk about him.
Huh,
So
huh. So
he
it
was
was baked in from the experience.
totally. So all of that kind of is my early experience with love for music and live music and the communion and community of being at a festival and the way that arts and music kind of go together and inspiration from, Rabbi Scramble. So
And uh, I guess where I would what I would wonder from there, coming up with such incredibly rich live music background. I
mm,
mean, shout out to your parents. I mean, shout out to all parents who encourage their kids to listen to music, whatever kind, just to expose them to music. It's a beautiful thing. So shout out to your folks for giving you that, not just the, you know, CDs, but actually getting to be there and be a part of it.
totally.
And not to mention with such legendary groups like Little Feat and Rat Dog. I mean, that's just, I mean, at the time of this taping, I'm going to see Bob Weir with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra at the Auditorium Theater
Nice.
in a month or so, and I'm just so incredibly excited. Growing up with that history, what was your first like real formative live music experience that really had that staying factor that was like, this is something that I get it.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I that last year that we went to Suwanee was I was probably 7 or 8, and that sticks out a lot in my mind. Like I don't have a very visual mind. I have a very spatial mind, which we could certainly talk about in my art and how it inspires me. But that is like a visual that I had throughout my young adulthood. Was I could like remember being at Swanee, laying in the hammock, running around, like seeing some of the like spray paint artists who do the planets and that kind of stuff. So I would say that was I mean, that it was just embedded in me from the get-go. My first like real concert was the summer between seventh and eighth grade. And my parents took me and my brother to Dave Matthews. They had been going every summer for years. My mom, we do this, I have a huge family on my dad's side, and we do this like Kris Kringle Secret Santa Christmas thing so that everybody can get a gift. And my oldest cousin in, I don't know, early 2000s had asked for a Dave Matthews CD. And, my parents love music. So my mom gave it a listen and just fell in love. And um, they went to Dave. That was like I mean, they went to a lot of concerts when I was a kid that I probably didn't even know about, but they went to Dave every year. And yeah, that year between seventh and eighth grade, they took Brian and I to the Tampa Amphitheater. And then I forget what we did, but they went and they kept West Palm because he does 2 nights in West Palm right after Tampa every year. They kept that for themselves for a while. And then when we were older, we would do a few together. But so yeah, that was kind of the first real concert. I was in middle school. I remember being like, oh, that smell. Yeah, I know. Okay. I get what that is now.
I
And
understand the
um,
Leonard Skinner song now. There we go.
oh yeah. And there, some funny little things. We met up with one of my parents' good friends from college at that show. I remember like some drunk college kid fell on our blanket. It got mustard, and my brother he's 4.5 years younger than me. He was so upset. It like ruined the rest of his night that he had mustard on his shirt. Um, but yeah, those are like little, little anecdotes I could pull from my memory. But the music was incredible. And that was the Grugerux King tour. And I had, my mom and I listened to a lot of music together in the car. And when that album came out, we were listening to that CD all the time. And my brain was just filled with Dave Matthews lyrics, especially like Funny the Way It Is. And a few others from that album, as well as like Typical Situation is one that I love, and You and Me. And he played a lot of those. Actually they opened with Funny the Way It Is in this really cool, like there were these almost like big sheets on stage, and then the musicians were behind them, and then they projected light from behind, so it was like big shadows of the
Yeah,
band.
I
So
love
it was
that
this
stuff.
really cool, like first I can go to concerts concert.
It's a great opening moment right there.
It was incredible.
So let's talk a little bit about Europe. Now, when did that come about? Was this so your first formative concert experience with, starting to go to these Dave Matthews shows, were you already drawing at this point? Or
Hmm.
was that something you had picked up a little bit further down?
I believe that art is a skill and anyone can learn it, but I was born an artist. It is like undeniably one of my gifts. Um, and my parents are both left-handed. They say that I picked up a pencil in my right hand at 10 months old and started drawing. Um,
Okay, there you go. There you go.
yeah. We have some cool pictures too of me drawing as like I could barely stand. Um,
That's that. I mean, listen, that there's being born an artist is a very real thing. I mean, we see, that we have different terms we use, savant, or this, that, the other, wunderkind, whatever the case may be. But I think that there are a lot of people who just have exceptional skills in one form or another. And I found when that manifests in music or in art, when it's awesome, it's awesome. And often when it's awesome, it starts from the formative era, from the beginning. And it really doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, it's surprising to hear that a 10-month-old would pick up a pen and start drawing, but it almost doesn't even surprise me, knowing you as I do, to hear that, it's part of the foundation of who you are.
Thank you. And I think there's a lot more to that too, in that although I feel it is one of my gifts and I was born with this talent was born with a talent that then, throughout your life experiences, you have to cultivate, you have to work on and improve if you want to. But that's like we all are born with certain gifts that are for us. And if you can recognize what those gifts are, um, you can really embrace the life that is for you. Um,
Well, shout out to your parents again, because you're absolutely right. Everybody is born with a gift, and it's being able to tap into that, but it's also being put into a position to be able to tap into that.
hmm,
And, shout out to parents who expose their kids to art and music, because if those are those in their innate abilities, I mean, that's how it gets recognized, and that's how it grows. And
yeah.
parents are secondhand talent in and of themselves
Oh
in that
yeah.
sense. And so far, the way that they, foster and help generate folks like you who are, created, and then, just like with any skill, right, as you were saying, it develops,
Yeah.
over time.
Yeah. And I know my parents are going to be ecstatic to hear to hear that. And as hopefully other parents who are listening too, if your child has a talent, I encourage you to
Yes.
encourage them, But I want to say too, there is a fine line with how parents may encourage their children, or I don't know that fine line is the right way to put it. I don't mean to say anything negative about my parents, but they provided me so much space and so much encouragement. And sometimes, especially in my early youth, um, it put a lot of pressure on me without them meaning to, because they complimented my work so much, or told me how great it was. I think that there were certain things that I began to create expectations for myself, that everything I created had to be good, or everything I created had to be great. And there were also times, my parents are creative in their own ways, but they're not visual artists. And um, I would be working on something and they would come kind of behind me and maybe compliment what I was working on. But because I was like in a flow or in deep focus, sometimes it would pull me out of what I was doing. And then, oh my gosh, like it's not good yet. Like, especially
All
as,
of a sudden you're
yeah,
exposed where you were in this reverie and you're just like pulled back into yeah, yeah, sure, sure. I can relate to that from just
yeah.
from a writing perspective. But yeah, I that's interesting. That's a very unique perspective. I hadn't really thought of that perspective before.
Yeah, there's almost like, I think that especially in my youth, I was complimented so much for my artistry that I learned to get validation from others rather than first validating myself for my art. Um, and that's something I've really learned how to do for myself through this live art vocation, I'll even call it. Um, and I think just to kind of give whatever wisdom I can from that, from my experience, as both a child and also as, a former teacher who has worked with students, and this applies to all kinds of talents, not just like artistic or musical talents, but, giftedness. Um, there's this kind of like Montessori theory around like, if you see your child actively engaged in something and very focused on it, rather than saying like, good job, you're doing great, like the best thing is actually to just be quiet and let them do. And then, afterwards kind of have this, like, you can be proud of them, you can encourage them, you can say, wow, it was so beautiful to watch you in your, create this or do this. But I ended up with, and this might also just be my character, my personality, some of the conditioning that I went through in different areas of my life. I was very much a perfectionist, very meticulous with my art. Got to a point where like I was much more musically involved than I was in visual arts, in my extracurriculars. And it wasn't doubt in my art, but it was, there was some fear there. And there was some, I don't know. It's just part of my story. But that's what I can share in the wisdom department of encouraging your children in their talents.
So being an artist, drawing, being a lover of live music, these are core elements of the foundation of who you are. How did the two of those come together to create live art?
Yeah. Um, it's
It's a big
been,
question. It's a
it
big
is a
question.
big
I know.
question. It's been a long journey. I'm going to give you some specific answers here because I know what you're looking for and I have some answers, but in the grand scheme of things, it's my story. I'm not going to say it's my purpose. I think I've got a lot of purposes here on this earth, but it's certainly something I'm called to do. And it's been really beautiful to surrender to that and allow it to naturally unfold. Um, so yeah, I mean, the seeds were planted early. We talked a little earlier about Scramble Campbell, and so there was some integral stuff. Um, The last time I took an art class was seventh grade as one of my electives. And then I was really, I love music, obviously, and I play music. So I was very um, focused on following some of my musical inspiration. I don't write music or anything like that, but I was in the choir at my church starting age 9 and, got into choir in middle school. And then I was in this program called American Musical Theater in high school. And we did the, big annual musical for school and part of the show choir and stuff otherwise and concert choir. And a lot of praise and worship music and, all that kind of stuff. So in terms of like, that's to say, I've always been really inspired by music and influenced by both music and art, and inspired by music in my art. And we talked earlier about how I kind of became, or maybe it's part of who I was, and I had to unlearn it. But I kind of became a perfectionist as a young
Yeah.
kid, and that really at times prevented me from just creating art. I was like that kid at school that kind of everybody knew was artistic, and I only took a couple art classes outside of school, but I'm such a compassionate and loving individual that I think often when peers would compliment my artwork, rather than just saying thank you and like taking that and internalizing it, I like wanted to ensure that they knew their work was great too.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so, at some point, probably before I was 10, my art was something, it was something I did, when I needed to, like my projects for school were always beautiful, but I also am like a huge procrastinator. So I would procrastinate to the last minute, then knock out this incredible thing, get an A plus, and like nobody would have believed I did it the night before, you
Well,
know?
I've always had a knack for writing, and I did the same thing with papers. I would turn it in, and the teacher would be like, "Wow, this is, you put a lot of thought, and you put a lot of elbow grease into this one." And be like, "Oh yeah, that's 100%. Yeah, it certainly did." Yeah, yeah. But like we talked about before as well, when you find your talent, whatever it is, you use it for your ends, and if those
Yeah.
ends are procrastinating on homework, then so be it.
Yeah, totally. And I think that honestly, there's something in procrastinating that if you can view it in a positive light, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Because I'm sure
Yeah.
you understand as a creative and a writer, there are times when like the putting off a project is not coming for me from not wanting to do it. It's more coming from the anxiety of what am I going to produce, or is it going to be like what I'm wanting it to be? And I find that there are times where, especially if I can be kind to myself about procrastinating on something, that it's actually beautiful because I have now like um stored up this energy of like I need to do this, I want to do this, I'm going to create this, and then all kind of at once I can put it into something. It's not always healthy, but and I have learned how to let go of procrastinating and to take my time and be patient with my art and with myself. Um, but yeah, I guess something in my spirit
That's
wanted to share that.
that's no, that's some solid advice. I think at the time of this taping, I really needed to hear that. I think that's a really powerful and important message that it's to be kind to yourself and to let yourself know that it's okay, that not everything needs to be pushed out immediately. It's okay to take time on things, and it's okay to make it what you want to be, what you want it to be, as opposed to pushing yourself to getting it done at a certain time or a certain day. I think, I mean, that r rings really true with, I mean, I'm incredibly grateful to everybody who's been following along this show, but it rings so true in the production of this current season we're in right now, actually, where there's just so much going on in the world of secondhand talent and beyond, where that's something that I really need to work on myself is being okay with allowing things to, develop the pace that they should.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something we all have to learn, and we all have to learn in our own ways, you know? Um, and on the other hand, like you don't have to feel ashamed if you procrastinate on something. It's like it's still, you're capable.
Right.
Um,
Speaking of procrastinating, I'm going to hold you to the answer though. When did live
okay.
music and art coincide?
There we go, right?
Great segue.
Yes. Golly. I I mean, last time I was home, I started looking through a box of art that my mom's kept of my stuff, and I found a drawing of the Jonas Brothers from like a Disney Channel concert from when I was in, I don't know, late middle school. And music has always inspired my art. And inspired things I've created for other people, especially having deadhead parents. I've always like painted things for them. One Christmas I did these really cool shoot canvas shoes for my mom where like one has dancing bears and one has the Dave Matthews Fire Dancer and there's like lyrics along the side. And I don't think she's ever worn them, hopefully because she wants to cherish the art. But
So
um
that's so cool.
so yeah, I mean, I've just always been inspired by music and used my gift of art to create things for others that were often musically related. Um, in college was when I went to my first festival as an adult. Really, my first festival since we stopped going to Magnolia Fest when I was a kid. Um, so 2018, Chase and I went up to Lock-In. Dead and Company played that year, and we had no idea what we were getting into with a festival. Like, I just think in the back of my mind, I was like, "Oh, I grew up at festivals. Like, I know what this is. Like, I know how to do this. I love camping." No, we had no
No,
idea what we
no.
were doing.
It's a whole
Oh,
different kind of animal.
oh
Yep.
my gosh, yeah. And so that year, I wasn't creating a lot. Like I've talked about this idea of procrastinating and being a perfectionist, and it like really actually just prohibited me from creating for myself. I prohibited myself from, I had all of this like stuff built up that I just wasn't really making art. And so that summer, I don't really remember why. I wasn't journaling very much and I decided I'm going to start a sketchbook kind of for the first time. But I like wanted to sketch the things that I was doing. So it was almost like a daily journal, like a daily drawing. Um, and I got one of these like little teeny tiny, I don't know, even know how big this is. Pretty small, like probably 3 by 4 or something like that, 3 by 5. And oh, this one is Mondegreen. So a friend just recently at Mondegreen was like,
Ah,
Caroline, I found this, and it happens to be the exact same notebook that I ever started live art in, which was awesome. So this is from 2018, and the very first thing in here is a drawing of Chase sitting in our like tapestry canopy, and I mean, you can see my like anxiety and I don't know, not anxiety, but like discomfort with making something that wasn't perfect. I drew this and then I wrote words on it, and it like says Chase does not have a beard or hair like this around his head. And like he's holding a piece of watermelon, and right next to it, it says actually cubed watermelon. Why'd I draw a slice? And like his Jeep is over here, which he no longer has. So it's like this fun little memory, right? But it's just funny to like see I didn't like this because it wasn't perfect. But looking back at it now, like I love it. Like I have this memory of our first festival. And so I drew that. And then this has got to be like the first time I've ever really drawn at a concert. This is Lock-In or J-Rad at Lock-In, August 25th, 2018 at 1 a.m.
Yeah, let's hold
Um,
that up right there for a sec so folks can take a look at it. Fantastic.
yeah.
Oh man. So that's so for folks who are listening, would you mind describing that for our people who are listening and not watching?
It is a little black pen drawing that has a very kind of like uh, gestury, like scribbly kind of uh, way of capturing the stage and some band members. You can kind of see the shapes of the drum head and maybe like what were probably guitars. You can, but you I didn't really draw them. And then just kind of these like circles and squiggles to represent the crowd at the bottom. Um, which is cool. And some circles of the lights. So you can kind of tell, stage in the middle.
Well, you can tell this also has like it's funny. Go back, put it up one more time real quick. I just want to what I think is so amazing about it and so funny is that you drew the gaffering on the side and it almost looks like curtains on the side of the
Yeah,
stage in a theater and it says locking at the top.
yeah,
And I think that's just a great little detail to have the crisscross beams in there and all that. Like that's when I see that, that's kind of what I look at and I'm like I see the totality of it and I love it for its both its detail and its simplicity at the same time. It's this wild juxtaposition that I haven't seen really anywhere but your art.
Thank you. Thank you. That really lights me up. I think it's something that is obviously natural. Like this is the first thing, the first live art piece that
And
I did at a concert.
what was happening? What give us the scene?
I
Like
don't
put us
remember. I really
even
don't.
better,
It was
even
1
better.
a.m. I was probably kind of high, really tired, and yeah, I
Allegedly,
literally don't
allegedly,
remember. Oh yeah, what did I say? What are you talking about?
allegedly.
Um,
No, but that's so cool that you've got this such a personal drawing and then such a personal drawing
yeah,
and to open it up and I love those little notebooks. I use them for jokes and set lists. I mean,
yeah,
continue on.
sure. Yeah,
Where are we going from there?
I'll give you this little inner look because I picked this up yesterday before, I was going through all my live art and it's just so special and like it really like gives me such faith uh in myself and just like the way that, I'm letting go again in my art, which is really beautiful. So the next one in here is a drawing of our us in a hammock. You can see my legs and Chase's legs, and
Oh yeah,
we're
yeah.
in Garcia's forest in the afternoon. It says August 25th, 2018, 2:16 p.m. There's some other people in a hammock and chair right here. Just a pen sketch. Here's another one that kind of shows like I wasn't comfortable drawing faces and stuff yet. So like here's a drawing of Chase in a hammock. And I guess I
Kind of
couldn't get his face quite right. So I
kind of looks
wrote,
like Johnny Bravo a little bit.
yeah, it kind of does. And I wrote next to it, again, Chase does not really have facial hair, dot, 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 dot. 2:30 p.m.
Hedging your bets a few minutes later.
Like, hey, future Caroline, it's okay. He didn't really like you're good, but not that good.
In case you
Um,
were allegedly in an improper state of mind, this is an accurate reminder of the facial hair situation.
and I don't even think it, I mean, I'm sure I was clear-headed, but it's just like for me, it's such a representation of like how much I cared about perfection and like or just I don't know, like trying to capture exactly what was there and
Well,
feeling like I hadn't done it quite right.
what stood out to me when you were describing that specific one just there was
Yeah.
that you noted the
Yeah.
timestamp. And I have a particular habit when I see a particular band called Phish of writing down what time. set starts, what time we're
Yeah.
doors, like that. I don't do it for most of the shows that I go to, but I've always found it a part of going to a Fish show or a Ween show or like any like of the bands that I just like truly love and care about that much. I timestamp it.
Yeah.
And,
Chase
a
does the
year
same thing.
at the
I love it.
well, at the time of this taping, we're just about a year and a half since the first episode of the podcast aired,
Awesome.
and and thanks. It's hard to believe saying that out loud. But yeah, April 5th, 2023 was our first episode. So we're coming up in a few days from now on a year and a half, and it's something that is em emblazoned, if that's a word. If it's not, it is now. It's emblazoned into my brain the importance of timestamps.
Mm,
I, as I edit, as I go through interviews, as I, rewatch all of these amazing conversations that I'm so grateful and privileged to have, paying attention to the timestamp is one specific thing that I have really has really become an incorporated part of my life. And for me, it highlights that something was really important. And I was doing it subconsciously at Fish shows, I guess, up until now. But
yeah.
since starting Secondhand Talent, and when I hear you talk about that, getting back to it, like I love that you cared about it enough that you were time stamping it, not just when you drew it, but also when you wrote the follow-up note. Like that to me, like speaks so much to the character of like the love of what you do.
Mm, thank you. And to the way that I'm capturing moments in time,
Mm.
you know?
Mm. That, that's so true because what you do is so unique in that we talked about this in the intro, and we'll bring this back now, how you create moments that people take with them. We mentioned the uniqueness of it being you have your unique perspective that you're drawing from, and everybody else, of course, has their own unique perspective, right?
Yeah.
And you kind of get to freeze a moment in time, which is something that's really beautiful to be
Yeah.
able to take a moment and preserve it.
Mm,
Um, that's not something that we as humans really are capable of doing. We can't hold on to an event, right? Eminem famously on the Eminem show in one of his tracks, right? Every time you spit, you feel like it's what you hit. I'm saying it wrong, but he says basically, you want to hold on to it for as long as you can because you don't know when you're going to get it again.
mm,
Um, you just want to revel in that moment, but it's not something that you can take with you. But you're operating from a vantage point where you can capture that moment. Where, when, what was the genesis of realizing that you went from this moment to capturing moments in a canopy with unintentional facial hair
mm.
to for to then progressing to capturing moments in shows. What was
Yeah.
the genesis that really clicked for you?
Yeah. Well, honestly, the pandemic caused a ton of transformation in my life, or was a catalyst for a lot of transformation in my life. I think for a lot of people it was, right?
Yeah,
Like we gained
absolutely.
this extra space. There was, at least in my experience, it was like one of the first times I really felt forced to deal with uncertainty. Um,
Mm,
I had talk about these other parts of my my character. And, I think maybe to alleviate the pressure of wanting to be perfect and wanting to, do everything and be talented and be smart and be whatever. Um, I had really found myself in a song that went, uh, this is what I'm doing, and this is what I will do, and this is what I'm going to do. I
Rinse,
had
repeat.
this,
Yep.
yeah, exactly. And that's actually like
Second,
exhausting.
second verse, same as the first. There you go.
Yeah, it's like, if you read a story that is exactly what you think it's going to be, it's pretty boring. Um,
Yeah, I literally said that in class today. That's what the gift of writing and art is to provide what people aren't expecting.
yeah, yeah. And I think that I always had this belief that um, my story was written, like
Mm.
there is a path for me or multiple paths for me. Like I'm a co-creator in this life is something I've learned through my live art. But I always had that belief, but I couldn't actually practice it. Like I was so anxious about uncertainty that I was just living a life that like I thought would be the most stable and enjoyable. And so for me, the pandemic like forced me into uncertainty and into um dealing with what that feels like and how to start to let go. And um, I
You had to,
I
you had to relearn how does the song go.
exactly and be open to it sounding way different than I thought it might.
Yeah.
Um, and there was a lot I've really gone through. I mean, I'm still healing and I'll always be healing. I think that as humans, that's something that if we can be open to, it's really beautiful. But I've gone through a lot of unconditioning and reprogramming and deconstructing and like just getting to like who am I really, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so when the pandemic hit, just prior to that, I really in 2019, like towards the end of the year, is when I had discovered Goose, and kind of at the same time also discovered Billy Strings, which is cool. I love that for me, like the two artists kind of struck around the same time, especially because these days and the way jam band fans are, like there's so much discussion and like I just really like don't care to compare. There's such different artists and I love both.
I
Um,
fully agree. And also quick shout out to Berta and Chris Quinn
yeah,
as photographers. Love you guys. Season two guests, go check their episode out.
I love
Um,
that.
Goose and Billy Strings. Yeah, I agree with you. There's no need to compare. Music is music. I can like Rocky Road and chocolate and vanilla at the same time. Like it's
Yeah,
all
and you
ice
might
cream.
have one that you want to get more often, right? And that's cool.
That's fair. And one's a
And
treat
somebody
and
else might like
one's
the other one more.
and
That's
that's
cool.
okay too.
Yeah. So, yeah, Billy played at he played a Sunday daytime set at Hulaween in 2019. Which I think is a good, I mean, that was a year, 2018 was my first Hula, and it was my first time back at Spirit of the Swanee since being 8 years old. It was my second
Wow.
festival after lock-in. And I had obviously, I just showed you these little notes, drawings. Well, I went back to Tallahassee. I went to school at FSU, and there's like there are a few more in here of lock-in. I won't show you all the details right now, but then like there's one in here of, um, like working on school stuff at one of my favorite coffee shops in Tallahassee, and then like one of my favorite nature walks. And then it just ends. Like I just like I don't know, maybe my ADHD, I put this book down and like just never picked it back up again, or who knows.
Interesting.
Um, but yeah, I So I think, having just done this at Lock-In 2018 and then a few months later went to my first Hulaween, um, and suddenly, like, in my mind, my only memory of live art there was Scramble Campbell, the one artist, and like the spray paint artist. Um, well, I go and they're probably in like their fifth year of hula, and there are tons of live artists, and there's
Right.
murals, and there's like, it's like, oh my gosh, there's like a whole
Like this
another
is a
world
thing.
to this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think that I really brought art stuff with me that year, but after that year, then I wanted to bring stuff with me. And 2019, I think maybe I brought stuff with me, but I remember, I think it must have been at Halloween. We were at the amp enjoying some music with friends, left that set to go to more music. And Chase made a comment about like, I don't even remember what it was, when the guitarist played this riff and then went in this and, like was really talking about the auditory experience. And I realized that I did not remember the set that we just watched at all, like 2 minutes post set. Like I was like, what? When did that happen? Wait, they played that song? Like, what? And I really kind of started to recognize, probably in the reflection after the fact, that I was dissociating at concerts. That like
Hmm.
I love live
Interesting.
music, but I was like so I think a huge part of it, which we'll get into with what I do in my live art and how I've learned this, is like I'm really energetically sensitive. Um, and I can feel other people's energy. And I love people. So I often like absorb that. And I also, at the time, like still had all these things that about me that I had been kind of conditioned. And so I had a lot of fears of judgment and, like
A
just
lot of
concern.
inhibitions to let go of. A lot of inhibitions
Totally,
to, yeah.
totally.
So that's a pretty, I mean, to me, I can really relate to that realization of leaving a concert, and maybe not even a couple days later, or maybe a couple hours later, really remembering in detail what took place. And, that it's a really sobering realization to kind of all of a sudden be like, oh my God, this music and these experiences that I enjoy so much, they're not really sticking with me the way that I thought with it that they were. You mentioned Mondegreen earlier. Mondegreen is the mishearing of lyrics, and a famous Phish one is, the moment dance, that the moment ends. You realize the moment ends. So what was the turn you made to to change that? Thanks so much for joining us for this conversation. Join us next week for part two. It is not over. This has been Steiner with another episode of Secondhand Talent with Caroline Herbster. Thank you so much for joining us, folks, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
That's podcast. There you go.